Mr. Teresi has been a 4-term mayor of Jamestown. He has turned things around down there, and as proof of that, he ran unopposed in the last election. He is admired and respected, but not only in Jamestown. The governor appointed him to the commission, an original commission, to investigate unfunded mandates, and he served as president of the New York State Mayors, and they formed a committee to continue the investigation of unfunded mandates. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce the Mayor of Jamestown, former president of New York State Conference of Mayors, a man who was appointed by the governor to serve on mandate relief, Mayor Sam Teresi.
With a couple of things that Laura said in the introduction, I am a 4-term mayor of Jamestown, first elected in 1999. The city that is the center of the 9th largest metropolitan area in New York State. I did run unopposed, but not because everybody thought I was doing a good job. They just couldn't find anybody else dumb enough to want to run for the office. I am loved and revered by all in my own mind, and the governor did appoint me to the first council on mandate review, because I've been screaming so loudly about it as the president of the Conference of Mayors, and before that if you put me in a room with 28 people, maybe they would drown me out. So I think that was the real reason that it happened. I want to leave this as an open dialogue. Laura indicated to me that that's the format, but I do want to provide just a couple of points of overview to put my background and my perspective into perspective. First of all, as somebody who does not exactly drink tea in the political arena, my bent is a little bit more to the progressive side, I do believe that there is clearly too much overlap and too many units of local government in New York State to be effective in the 21st century. You cannot run a 21st century state and supply services that build a 21st century economy with an 18th or maybe 19th century structure of government providing most of the services in this state. Because as we know, and this is the whole notion of mandates, the state takes most of its services that it provides and hands them off to somebody else to provide the services. Namely the 62 counties, the 62 chartered cities, the 550 villages, the 900 towns, the 700 school districts, and depending on which day of the week that you are waking up on, nobody knows the number for sure, but roughly 5,000 separate taxing jurisdictions in the state of New York. Water districts, sewer districts, highway districts, library districts, all with their own governing boards. We have too many units of government in the 21st century New York State bumping into each other to do the service that's necessary to serve the people of our communities in this state. That also results in a high level of taxation. It's not just about, as my dad used to say, what you do, but how you do it. New York does a lot of what, but it's also how we do it in the state. And we're all paying the bill as property owners here. My other kind of introductory point, I do not particularly like property taxation as a means of raising money to pay for those state services at the local level. My personal bent is it's a very regressive form of taxation, only beaten by the sales tax. And also, it's an antiquated, inefficient, and unfair form of taxation to provide for services that are consumed by the general public. The system was put together in the 19th century as a way of funding local services that most people were partaking of, and largely at the time, the bulk of the property tax burden was paid by the business community in incorporated cities. We all know what's happened. The business community has moved to the suburbs, to the Sun Belt, to the Pacific Rim, and the burden falls upon homeowners. And a dwindling class of homeowners in the urban areas. And if anybody wants to know why our urban areas nationally and in New York State continue to decay, that's one of the big reasons. So with that kind of just as a brief overview, I'd like to turn it over to you and talk about some of the issues that you may have from a property taxation standpoint, an unfunded mandate standpoint, which is really driving the property taxes in New York. Wow, I've left them speechless at Chautauqua. That's awesome.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you being here and your concern about property taxes. You're aware the institution property owners represented here pay a good chunk of taxes to the county.
Right.
What can we do to help the county get a grip and spend the money wisely? Most of us, many of us are not voters, as you know.
Right.
What can we do?
Well, I think that what you need to do is to continue to work with your county leaders. I do have to say something, I'm not being defensive for the county leaders, but I do have to say something in defense. The vast majority of what you're paying for in your county taxes are mandated services passed down by the state, namely Medicaid. There's a huge amount there. It's mandated service. New York State, incidentally, I believe is one of only 2, maybe 3 states in the entire country that chooses to fund its portion of the federally mandated Medicaid program. It's a split program between the federal and the state governments, but we're one of the only places, the great vampire state of New York, that chooses to pay its 50% share of Medicaid by passing down half of that cost to counties who then have virtually no way but to impose property taxes to pay for it. There's a variety of other mandates at the county level as well. So I think that what you need to do is to continue to voice, as my constituents do to me in the city of Jamestown, and my constituents across the state, until I finished my term as president of the Conference of Mayors, did, that we need to be lobbying the state, speaking out to the state, that if the state wants it, if the state feels so strongly about the service that it needs to be mandated down to the local level, they should pay for it. And they should pay for it out of a more progressive, statewide form of revenue raising. The thought is that if they had to actually pay for it, they had to actually raise the revenue, they had to actually run on it every 2 years as legislators, or every 4 years as the governor, they may have a different view of the type of services that are being provided, the level of the services that are being provided, and as again my dad used to say, it's not only what you do but how you choose to do it, telling us how we have to provide it. You know, we have a lot of problems in New York State, and I'm not running for higher office. This is it for me. Okay? We have a one-size-fits-all mentality in the state of New York. And this is a tale of many states. So I think that the only thing that we're left to do at the local level is work with our local officials to get them engaged on a statewide basis, speaking out and saying, we need to change the structure of government. It's ridiculous that in a county this size, we have one county government that should be able to provide for most of the services, 27 towns, 15 villages, 2 cities, and 18 school districts in a county of 136,000 people. That is ludicrous. I would imagine that most of you probably come from other destinations and maybe areas that do not have the history and the structure of government in New York State. The old adage is that New York, when the colonies were becoming states after the Revolution, the New England states created their form of local government around cities and towns. The Mid-Atlantic states formed around cities and counties. New York State couldn't make up its mind and adopted all of the above and threw in villages just for the heck of it. So I think that's what you really need to do. The group that you've put together can be a force, is a force, particularly if you're part of an overall choir that we have been trying to encourage to develop across the state. Again, the issues at the state level, I'm not kicking it upstairs, but that's where it is. As local governments, we are all subdivisions of the state government created by our Constitution. We are the state. We work for the state. We're a unit of state government at the local level, and it's easy to kick it downstairs into the laps of the local governments. Our point is this: if you're going to mandate it, you want it done, you're going to tell us how to do it, pay for it. Otherwise, give us more flexibility and autonomy of self-governments at the local level to decide what the level of service that we need for our constituents, because Chautauqua County is a very, very different place than Rockland County, Westchester County, Nassau, Suffolk, or Seneca County, or Clinton County up in the North Country. Yes, sir.
A major issue that we all worry about, and I'm sure you do too, is the deteriorating condition of Chautauqua Lake. So we wondered if you could spend a few minutes talking about ways that Jamestown is participating in improving that vast, wonderful resource that we all share.
Well, we're very concerned about the lake too, because for those of you that aren't geography majors in Chautauqua County, what happens up on the north end of the lake ultimately gets deposited in the heart of our city. So the Chautauqua River that runs through the city of Jamestown, which is the headwaters for the Mississippi watershed, is the drain for Chautauqua Lake. And over the past 200 years, my ancestors, the businesses of Jamestown did its share to pollute tremendously the Chautauqua River and everything downstream from it. We're no longer doing that. We have state-of-the-art facilities, we follow regulations, there's been a lot of deindustrialization, but what's happening in the lower basin and the north basin of the lake is critically important to us. It's also critically important to us from another standpoint. That lake is one of the major drumbeats of the local economy. You're all here largely because somebody decided to build and maintain and develop this amazing institution on a lake. As a summer residence, as a summer place of learning with a beautiful backdrop, summer place of recreation. The lake matters. It is one of the engines, major engines of the local economy. I don't have the answers. I'm not a scientist by trade. But it seems to me that something more dramatic than just cutting weeds in the lake needs to happen. That may be part of the solution. But I know that every time that I mow my lawn, it grows back. We're mowing the lawn at the bottom of the lake. Something needs to be done to control what's going into the lake. Something needs to be done, and I don't have the answers. I'll have to leave that with those that have a pay grade much higher than mine to figure out what that is, but it's huge. Bart?
Hi. In last year, the county legislature, this is for your information because Sam already knows this, the county legislature voted to reduce its size from 25 to 17. However, they didn't put a date on when that was going to happen, so it hasn't happened yet. Still, it was a step in the right direction. The school, as I have reported about establishing Chautauqua Lake as the regional high, we've got 18 superintendents who each gets well over a three-figure salary. We don't need to have that size, especially when there's one school that is almost at capacity. The other 17 are either half or two-thirds full. It's time for merging, and I urge you to write on the back of the handout that I have given you are the addresses where you can write. Our senator has proposed to the state senate, and they passed unanimously that schools should be allowed to regionalize. It hasn't come before the assembly because nobody in the assembly has proposed it as a possibility. The question I wanted to address to you, Sam, is in January, the governor proposed I believe it was a 5-year plan that would address the property taxes, would address unfunded mandates. What is the likelihood of anything coming from that, and how soon?
Well, I'm not real sure about what the 5-year plan is. All I know what the state has done is proposed a property tax cap levy increase of 2% per year with certain exclusions. That has been put into place. And what that does is it restricts local property taxing jurisdictions to raise their property taxes no more than 2%, or the tax levy, not your tax rate, the tax levy by no more than 2% per year, with a formula that allows some communities to go over that 2% some that have to come in under because there's a certain level of exclusions there. What they've done is basically worked on one side of the economic equation, choking off revenues for local governments, but have not given us the authority to change the expenditure side of the equation with what we are doing to produce services, the type of services, and how we have to deliver them, dealing with the labor laws of the state, disability retirement laws of the state. So what they've done is they've created an equation of where most of the 62 cities in New York State are right now in either modest level of distress or approaching a severe level of distress. And within 3 to 5 years of the 62 cities in New York State, unless something is done from the mandate side of the equation, which the state has done very little about at this point in time but talk, unless something is done and we can start reeling in expenditures, within 3 to 5 years, most of the cities, the 62 cities in New York State, will be in default. And looking at the possibility of either a state control board coming in to run our affairs or municipal bankruptcy. As I've said before on many occasions, you can't have a viable and strong neighborhood to sell to the rest of the world if every house on the block is falling apart. And that's where we're headed in New York State, unless they follow up the property tax cap that they put in place with meaningful, substantive mandate relief and allowing the 62 cities, the 62 counties, the 900 towns, the 550 villages, the 700 school districts, and so forth, to start controlling the expenditure side of the equation. We can only do what they tell us we can do, and the authority they give us with how to do it. That has to change. The position of the governor, who's a personal friend of mine, we go back a ways. I support him. I still do support him. His position is the position of the legislature, the position of the business community. We'll do the property tax cap. We've got to do that first. We've got to create basically the impetus, the initiative to go in and drive the mandates, because every single one of those mandates that are out there has a very large and influential and well-funded constituency organization behind it. Public labor unions, other interest groups that have all benefited by the system that is killing local government and services in New York State and also driving people out of here with the high tax bills we pay. Their feeling is that we needed to do the tax cap first, and then we'll get right to the mandate relief. Last year they put the tax cap in effect. There's been little talk about mandate relief since. So, getting back to your question, we need to say, we can't cap what we can't control. Give us the ability to address the expenditure side of the equation. Most of you probably spent a lifetime in private business. You understand the two sides of the economic equation. Our state leaders haven't quite caught up to that level of understanding. Yes, sir.
Sam, are you an attorney?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you an attorney?
No, I'm not. My background is in public administration.
Most people my age that go in to see their attorney get told to spend down and get rid of their property and give it to their kids and so on, so that when they need to go into a nursing home, they can go on Medicaid, and but the taxpayers pay for it. So you know, you're talking about tax caps and government workers, which quite frankly I used to be, and I'm getting a very modest pension for my 32 years of service. You're on these committees and you know the governor. Why don't you get people together to get rid of this provision and make people pay for their own services when they get old, instead of going on the dole? Everybody says it's the poor that are reckoning with the Medicaid, but the statistics are clear that it's the middle class that spends down and goes on the dole when they get elderly. So I think that's where you start. This document, that whoever put this together did a good job, and we're talking about the county and the towns and the unfunded mandates, and they're saying, well, the primary thing is Medicaid, that's your problem, not state workers or, and that sort of thing. I'd like to see you address that, please.
Thanks. Sir, do you mind if I ask where you're from and where you...
I live in Amherst, New York.
Okay. So you have some background. First of all, let me say that I am not an advocate to eliminate the rights of workers to organize or to collectively bargain. This isn't Wisconsin. And I'm not the president of the Wisconsin Mayors Association. I believe that's a right. I believe that's a right by federal law. It's certainly put into place by the 1968 Taylor Law here in New York State that did two things. It gave public workers the right to organize, and government then had to recognize and deal with the collective bargaining body they put in place, but at the same time took away their right to strike. There's been several add-ons to that has totally warped the intent and the impact of the Taylor Law since that time. There's no question about it as it relates to county government that produces a certain level of service in New York State, the Medicaid system, the Lulus that are in the Medicaid system here in New York State is a major driving force. But most people in New York State live in one of the 62 cities and the 550 villages. In fact, 16 million out of the 20 million New York State residents live in one of those 600 units of government that I represented over the past couple of years. So that is a huge, huge part of the overall tax burden that is making New York State unproductive, inefficient, and uncompetitive. Medicaid is a huge part of it because we're all county residents in New York State. But the local government mandates, I say, don't lose sight of that. The governor did put together last year a Medicaid restructuring body that was comprised of local government officials, people running the Medicaid systems, healthcare professionals, union representatives, and not with everybody in agreement, they came up with about $5 billion of reduced services. Some folks weren't happy about that. A lot of healthcare providers, a lot of hospitals and nursing homes throughout the state, because that is going to be a fiscal stress to them. So nobody's ever going to be happy. But you can't simply just attack the Medicaid problem and deal with the high cost of government. There's a variety of other things, and I could sit here and opine today about some of the issues as a city mayor that I have to deal with. For instance, do you know that when a firefighter gets hurt in the state of New York, in a professional fire department, mostly in cities, but in a lot of villages, some counties, and they retire on disability, they get 100% of their wages plus salary increases to the age of 70 and a half. That was something that was granted by the state of New York, no doubt to curry favor with the International Association of Firefighters. I love my firefighters. Can't live without them. Couldn't do their job. But why is it that one profession and one bargaining unit in the state of New York has that as a disability retirement benefit and nobody else does? True story. Can't name names. One of my firefighters a couple years ago wrenched his back. Doctor's opinion, he can't work. Retires. Gets the enhanced, what they call 207A disability retirement, which most of them go out under. He wrenched his back, bending over to pick up something on the fire department floor. A couple years earlier, I had an undercover police officer shot in the head during a drug bust, or during a drug deal gone bad. Brain damaged, lost his sight, never able to work again, physically disabled as well. He doesn't get the same disability retirement benefit as the firefighter does. I had 3 electrical workers blown up changing out a transformer. One of them will never work again, will be in rehabilitative care for the rest of his life. He doesn't get the same benefit. Something is wrong. Something is wrong in New York State, particularly when you take a look at the fact that the state creates the mandate. They will pay a percentage of that salary cost with raises. while that continues to add to the retirement benefits of the firefighter after 70 and a half, and is tax-free in the state of New York, they will pay a percentage of that up to $25,000 a year. The rest of it is billed back to the local government. If you want to give a ticket on the property tax levy, and incidentally in the city of Jamestown budget this year, to pay for our 9 firefighters that are out on disability benefits, we pay more towards their salaries and get nothing in the way of services in return than what the state is doing with the benefit that they approved, with the favor that they presumably gained through campaign contributions and other endorsements through the International Association of Firefighters when the law was written many years ago. Things need to change. I agree with you. Medicaid needs to be looked at, but everything needs to be looked at. And as I've said before, you've got all these units of government all experiencing the same fiscal distress. Not every single one of them can possibly be wrought with waste, fraud, and abuse at the same time. Something else needs to be happening out there, and it's all the mandates that we keep talking about. Yes, ma'am.
This isn't a question, it's really an observation and a frustration that I have and observed. I see this great flight to Florida because New York State, I don't want to call you hardworking people incompetent, but their act isn't totally together. People try any way possible to get out of this state and not pay taxes here and yet use the good parts of New York State. I pray you can make some influences in all of them.
I'm not going to make anything by myself. It's going to require leadership at all levels, and I also subscribe to the notion, inevitably, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. And that gets back to your point early on. It starts here. It's got the grassroots. I do believe that there is a movement starting to happen through the state. I do believe that our state leaders are feeling it and hearing it. I do see some impetus for change, but there is going to be tremendous, and already is tremendous, pushback. We saw it earlier this year with just a slight revision in the New York State Public Employees Pension System initiative that the governor put forward, that the legislature ultimately passed. It almost didn't happen because the forces against any type of change whatsoever are very strong. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here. I'm a year-round resident. We had a speaker yesterday at 2 o'clock, and this right here. His name is Orr, and he is an environmental specialist. He has turned Oberlin into a green community. It's a role model not only for Chautauqua but for the nation. And I would like you to look at some of his work. Chautauqua's made some strong beginnings with rain gardens and other things. I think we need to stop spraying toxics on everything around us. That would help the lake first and foremost. But I would like you in Jamestown to make a commitment to the environment.
Actually, green is good in my mind. Green is good, green is smart. We spend a lot of money on energy conservation initiatives that are going to pay us back and are paying us back. And just incidentally, we have one of the largest per capita municipal park systems in the state of New York, 550 acres of programmed parkland, passive recreation areas, a lot of green spots. Come on down to Jamestown and get a chance for the older, former industrial, still a lot of industry, small city that's trying to struggle and succeed, and I think we are making some progress. A lot of green space down there, and not 1 square inch of it do we use pesticides and fertilizer on. And we're still able to cut the grass and make things look good.
I'm going to close it because we have a time frame. I know many of you say, well, what can I do? I can't vote. I'm not a New York State resident. You are a New York State taxpayer. And as such, I urge you to write to the addresses that I've included on the back of the handout unfunded mandates that I gave you this morning. If you don't have one, I think there are plenty left over. And write to the governor as well. Let him know that we're hurting. He doesn't need to know that you can't vote because you fly to Florida or wherever it is that you go. But he can know that you're paying a hefty tax, and that makes a big difference to all of us here in Chautauqua. All of us. Thank you very much.
Laura, if I could, just one parting thought to leave you with. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming to Chautauqua Institution, Chautauqua County in Western New York. Thank you if you're a year-round resident for staying here. You're part of the revitalization of this place. Please keep coming back. I also do not want to leave you with the impression that the sky is dark and getting darker here. I think that we're waking up out of a long slumber. Good things are happening here. I believe good things will happen. But as my friend the governor always reminds me when he grabs me by the lapels, he's up here, I'm down here, and he grabs me by the lapels, he said, "We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of the mess that we're in overnight." I do see signs of progress. I want to leave you with that thought. The other thing that I just want to let you know is I obviously didn't bring enough for everybody, but I have some handouts that I'll leave with Laura if you want to pick them up from her. It's a copy of a testimony that I gave to the governor's current Mandate Relief Council back in March with my top 5 favorite mandates that need to be attacked, eliminated, or reformed to help pull the 62 cities of New York State off the edge of the cliff that we're standing on right now. If you're interested in it, you didn't happen to get a copy of it, I would ask you to write down this website because you can go online and take a look at it. It's the city's website. It's just Jamestown, NY, all lowercase, jamestowny.net. Go to the news and media link, click on that, scroll down, you'll find it there in PDF format. And I got a lot of blank stares and a couple of attaboys and no threats, so that's a good thing. So thank you again for your time and your